All right, I'm going to call the study session to order as alternate Commissioner De Gravina sit down. And we have two items on the, and we'll start with number one, GP 22-16 Lumberyard and Z-16 Lumberyard. And Kristen.
All right. Good evening, Commission. The case I have for discussion tonight is for a minor general plan amendment for the lumberyard. Maybe. Thank you. The site is located west of the Heritage District, northeast of Neely and Cullimber. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property to develop a multifamily community. It's going real great tonight. Veronica, you have a very concentrated face. Are you trying to fix it? Yeah. All right, sorry about that. I'm bringing this tonight to receive your input on the proposed request. We are specifically looking for feedback on the proposed general amendment and rezoning, as well as the proposed deviations that are being requested. There it goes. Okay, the site is approximately 8.5 acres and is currently class industrial. The applicant is proposing a general plan amendment to change the site from industrial to 25 to 50 dwelling units per acre. That is requesting a rezoning of the 8.5 acres from general industrial to multifamily high. Right, the site is located within the long-range planning area with its district redevelopment plan. In that plan, the preferred land use at the lumberyard site is multifamily parks, retention, and transit. The proposed lumberyard development falls in line with land use and will be beneficial to the Heritage District by providing a density of housing around the Heritage District, which promotes an 18-hour downtown, increases the ability to attract retail users, and generally supports the vitality of the district, creating a more and self-supporting downtown. The proposed density of 35.3 dwelling units per acre with a total of 300. The units will be located within 3 separate buildings. One building will face Neely and will be 3 stories tall. Another building will be placed at the rear of the site and will be 4 stories tall. And the final building will be placed in the center of the site. It's the largest and will also be tall. There are access points to the site, both off of Neely. Parking is found throughout the site, but most importantly is located on the northern and southern borders of the site, providing an additional buffer from the adjacent industrial zonings. Currently, the site is shown as being underparked, and we have been working with the applicant to park the entire site on site. Seeing conceptual renderings that the applicant has shared with us. The renderings are not part of the review, just supplemental at this point. The applicant is requesting a PAD with 2 deviations. The first deviation is for a parking reduction. Per our land development code, a PAD is not an eligible avenue to request parking deviations, so that the applicant remove any reference to that in their future document submittals. The second deviation that the applicant is requesting is for a reduction in open space. The open space requires 40%, and the applicant is currently requesting 36%. Multiple neighborhood meetings for this site have been held over the past year. Concerns from the public regarding the project have included density, proximity to adjacent industrial, parking, traffic concerns. The project was also taken to a study session with the Redevelopment Commission on 20th due to its proximity to the Heritage District. Some of the feedback provided by those commissioners were the site being underparked, support for the street front building only being 3 stories instead of, and that perhaps rooftop amenities could be a way to bring the total open space closer to the 1%. Since the RDC study session, we're meeting with the applicant where they proposed 2 potential options that would allow them to meet the required parking on. Both options do require a reduction in density, the request in an open space, and a slight increase to the acreage of the site. We're continuing with them to figure out the best path forward, but currently this is the direction that we're headed. Right, and then again, I'm just hoping for feedback tonight on the proposed general plan amendment and as well as the requested deviation on the open space reduction. Available for any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Kristen. Does anyone have questions they'd like to start off with? Oh, that was an aye for me. I apologize. Commissioners, please.
Thank you, Chair. Kristen, for you, is it my understanding that we're looking at allowing rooftop space to be incorporated as open space, considering rooftop space is open space? Is that my
Yes.
understanding of that? I guess I kind of have a question in general, and I see this kind of coming up maybe more often as we start looking at some of these areas where density is going to be more prevalent. With regards to our requirement for the 40% OPS, although I appreciate that, I feel like with some of this density, that's something that we need to really consider reducing in order to get our parking. Be kind of my position. I don't know. I mean, it'd be amenities on the rooftop, but I mean, then are we going to get somebody come in and build out the entire packed with rooftop and say, hey, we got 40% on top of the roof? So I don't know. I mean, I would have some issue with that, but with regards to the parking, I would be willing to bend on the open space deviation in order to maintain parking. I don't have an issue with what's being requested or proposed. The height is fine. I don't have an issue there. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Simon. Vice.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Kristen. So the question, you talked about parking and you're working on that. You talked about the parcels to the north and south, so this is kind of consistent with what the long-term goal is. As you're parking, I know it's early in the process, but is this proposal scheduled to be gated? Do we know?
Chairman, Vice Chair Bianca have an answer to that. My applicant
Okay.
is here though, and they might be able
Yeah, I mean,
to-
that's far. I'm just wondering,
Gated.
as you're working, was that going to be an issue if it was gated? So it sounds like you guys can still discuss that through the process. You also talked about a reduction in units and density. I'm imagining it's the same classification, they're just reducing the number of units. Okay.
Yes.
The other curiosity I had is, what's the easiest access for them to get the Heritage District amenities? That's something I don't need to know now, but I'm just kind of curious how you took to that Heritage District connection. And then I also agree with Commissioner Simon. I understand the reduction in the open space. It's not a huge ask, but I would want to be setting a precedent of using open space versus amenities and trying to, so that just may be something I want to keep an eye on. If it's just a complex amenity, counting that as open space, if we're going to start seeing that more and more. But other than that, I think it's a fair proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you for the presentation. Regarding the open space deviation, I'm okay with that. The reason being is project is in that downtown Heritage District. I mean, the whole purpose of that downtown area is to create an environment. So if we're deviating from that open space a little bit, and we're making up for it with amenity space that's on the roof, and that's something that I've done on projects before here in Gilbert, where we were allowed to use a rooftop amenity towards the open space. And these types of projects, I mean, they provide so much internal amenity areas. So I'm fine with the requested deviation. Refresh my memory, was it last month or 2 months ago when staff presented us the land development regarding parking requirements and the deviations? Was that last hearing, or has that gone to council yet?
It'll be going January 9th, so next week.
Okay, so the proposed word changes that we had at Planning Committee regarding residential, where we were not going to allow any deviations for that. Is that in it to council? Or is it sticking with the original document?
Chairman and Council, Commission, we took Planning Commission's recommendation forward, and what that recommendation was, that any requests for reduction to residential, regardless of the number, would be a use permit that would come before Planning Commission. So that's the recommendation that was forwarded on to council.
Okay, so if the applicant is requesting, parking deviation, that's the route, in my mind, that they're just going to have to go, is through the use permit. I wouldn't support it through the PAD, especially multifamily. Multifamily projects are just, and especially in an area like this. So I think to find a way to meet the current LDC with the parking requirement. If not, then in my mind, they need to go through the use permit process for that requested deviation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Davis?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kristen. I see this as a little more isolated and not quite as accessible to the dam as I would like it to be. I was out there yesterday, and it looks like there's a bridge kind of north of the lumber site on that north side that takes you over there, but it's walk and you're kind of isolated walking over there. But that eased my comfort level a little bit to see that there is that pedestrian access to. But I do think that still leads me to feel like they need parking on their site. I also would be supportive of rooftop open space area, but I also think that the open space is still important, especially because it is somewhat isolated. It's not quite as accessible to some multifamily like the one that's to the east of this. I'm still with the industrial, I can kind of see more where the north is eventually to something like this. I could see where that could happen to the south. Those are individually owned lots. So it seems less likely that that's going to change over from being real, and it looks pretty intense out there with cranes and all kinds of stuff. So that's something to definitely look at in how you buffer the views of these, for instance, because they're pretty tall. You're looking, I mean, some people might get a kick out of looking at that industrial, but out, it's not necessarily going to be the best living environment, and you're kind of sandwiched between the two. So again, I can see where this is misdirection, but I don't see that little industrial park going away. And I do have a concern with the and how that's handled. So I guess that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. And then just for context, you mentioned what was going to happen to the north of this site. So we're at 75 on there. That's a future 10-acre retention basin that the town is going to be constructing.
Okay.
Just for context.
I didn't catch that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Anyone else? Okay. So, given the parking, I think parking is more important than a small D in the green space. It is tied into an urban, and there is that walkway. It may be a bit away, but I think that is something that, in the theory of the way that the boardwalk is going to go through the district all the way to the north there, in the eventual future, would consider it tied in somewhat. And I agree, I'm not a big fan of green space, however, in a small variation for a is kind of isolated. And then you also have that retention be up there, given most of the time that'll be wide open and green. So, I guess that works for me. But I would say just keep working on is to make sure we get the parking filled up, and that I don't think we have with a small deviation in that open space. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
No, I just had a thought that kind of popped into my head. So you had mentioned that the base, or the retention basin to the north of this, is the town purchasing this lot right now, or in a sales agreement? Where are we at with that? And can you share? And then secondly, if that is the case, had the engineers then looked at this and decided that that retention basin is the actual size, we have ability to deviate on that lot to supply the developer space for their parking and green space or open space?
Sure. So Chairman, Commission, everything is still kind of early. We don't have any designs for the retention basin or anything as of yet. Economic Development has been the department that's mostly involved in it, so they'll have more details if you wanted to touch base with them. I do know that it has, I believe, gone to council and been okay, just the 10 acres, and then potentially an additional 8 acres. But it is still very early. We don't know what the design is going to look like yet. The 10 acre we needed for 100 years of retention, I believe.
So will that then be a part, and this may be outside this conversation, but will that then be part of shed conversation and obviously runoff at that point? Is that?
I have an answer for you on
Okay.
that.
We can address that later. Just a thought.
Thank you, Commissioner Simon. Okay, Kristen,
I think so. Thank you, everybody.
thank you. Number 2 on the agenda this evening is Z23-08, and let's take it to the north for Heritage North. Ashley.
Thank you, Chairman. And so Heritage North, you have seen before. This is located at the southwest corner of Juniper Avenue and Gilbert Road, at the north entrance to the Heritage District. So this is road is the northern boundary, and this is what we call our north anchor site. Background, this is an 11.97 acre property. The PAD was originally up in January of 2022, with the design review and use permitting after in February of 2022. What the applicant is doing at this point is an amendment to that PAD so that they can continue forward with development of this. Specifically, they're looking to amend the development plan in order to allow for phasing of the development, something which wasn't considered as part of the original approval, as well as modification of condition of approval that I'll talk about in a moment. So just to reorient commission, since it's of years, since some of you have seen this site, and I know we've got some new commissioners. So the site includes 9 total buildings. It's a mixed-use development that includes normally a hotel, office, retail, parking garage, commons open, Water Tower Way, which is the paseo that connects the north end of the Heritage District all the way end of the Heritage District, as well as improvements along the Western Power Line Trail, which is at the southern boundary of the site. So this project proposes to improve some spaces, as I mentioned, the Commons Open Space, Water Tower Way, and the Western Power Line Trail. When this project originally came through, it was anticipated to be built in a phase. However, given changes in market conditions, the applicant is now proposing to phase the development. What they are looking at doing as part of Phase 1 is family building, which is located at the northwest corner of the site. The large building is surrounded by a parking garage, or that surrounds a parking garage. They're also looking at developing 3, which is a 2-story building that includes retail space. They would include the Commons Open Space, development of Water Tower Way, off-site improvements, and then I didn't mention buildings 5 and 6 also would be built the first phase. They're looking to defer development of the hotel, and it could come in as part of Phase 1. It may be part of Phase 2, and finding a hotel user. And then they're also looking at deferring in of the south garage, as well as the office building. Deferral of that parking structure on the south end of the site would require them to build a parking lot in lieu of that for the time being. And so the new development plan would include Phase 1 development that includes the surface parking lot and then those temporary fences that would be around the portions that aren't yet developed. Phase 2 would include the remainder of the site. So the hotel, which as I mentioned may be constructed as part 1, Building 4, which is a small retail building off of the garage. It would include Building 7, a multi-story office building, and then the south parking garage. In addition, I mentioned that the applicant is looking to modify one of the conditions. This was the original condition that was approved with the original development that includes that the applicant shall not be permitted to charge, impose, or any fee, toll, or cost for the use of any parking spaces on the property. The applicant is that they would like to be able to charge a fee for residents as part of the residential garage, potentially to be able to reserve parking spaces in the south garage for others of the office building or the retail uses. And so the applicant has language in blue that in Phase 1, no more than 500 spaces may be reserved for guests of the multifamily residence, and there shall be a minimum of 200 public parking spaces provided free of charge. Upon completion of Phase 2, as depicted in the development plan, the entirety of the project shall have no more than 90 spaces reserved for office employees, hotel guests, or multifamily residents, and there shall be a minimum of 300 parking spaces provided free of charge. Staff is still the applicant on this condition, and this will likely not be the final language that to Planning Commission. We do need some additional information from the applicant that will be part of their review application that should be submitted shortly. We can verify some of these numbers. Staff is also looking at opportunity to add language that would potentially limit the reservation of parking to certain days of the week, hours, so that on the weekend we're not holding spaces, office employees when they're not parking there. So those are some of the changes as we move forward with that language. So as I mentioned, we're continuing to work through that language. We are also continuing to evaluate what new conditions need to be added relative to the phasing. So on the site plan, you saw that there was some construction fencing around those pieces of land that aren't going to be developed. If this may add some conditions that be enhanced construction fencing instead of chain link, as an example. So from here, the PAD amendment does have to go to Redevelopment Commission since it's a district for a recommendation. Then it'll come to Planning Commission for recommendation and then to Town Council. I mentioned that there is a design review that was previously approved. That'll be amended as part of the process as well to incorporate the different site plans for the various. That will just go to Redevelopment Commission, but that'll follow the PAD if approved. And then there were 2 use permits approved by Planning Commission, obviously, one for a hotel in the Heritage, and the other was for ground floor residential. Those will likely expire before is completed, and so you will see those applications again just to kind of reaffirm those so that they don't expire. With that, I'm happy to answer if the commission has taken any feedback that you have relative to the phasing plan or the condition modifications.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Want to open up with some questions? No?
I do have one.
Yeah. please,
One
Commissioner
question.
DeGravito.
In reference, being a new member on the commission, it seems we have a lot of multifamily developments coming up. And living here for 33 years, there's a huge apartment complex on the northwest corner of Elliott and McLean. My question or my concern would be, are you guys doing any studies on, are we having the right proportion of multifamily in comparison to single-family townhomes and condos? Make sure that we have the right mix so we could have the right type of people living here, so our cops and everybody that we need to live here can afford to live here, and we have the right house.
Commissioner, we do keep track of percentage makeup is of the town of multifamily versus single-family residential. We checked, it was 11%, 12% residential is multifamily. And the other number I don't remember off the top of my head, but we do keep track of that. We did have some information presented to council one point in time, but we do work closely with our economic development department as well when properties are rezoned to make sure that we're still meeting the needs of town.
Yeah, and just to follow that up, I believe that the surrounding areas, Chan, Mesa, Scottsdale, and others of the like are in the high teens for just for reference. So the 12% is actually quite low for urban area.
So we have a need for multifamily in comparison to other communities.
That is correct. We, Commissioner Montes, we are low compared to our surrounding cities.
Very good. Anyone else? Vice Chairman Bianchi.
Thank you, Chair. So Ashley, I just want, so the development agreement already provides for phasing, correct? So this is just getting it through zoning, correct?
Chairman and Vice Chair, that is correct. In October of 20, the staff took forward an amendment to the development to Town Council in order to amend the phasing or the line for development. The development schedule is what it's called. And it now includes kind of offset starts and completion dates, which will allow for them, whereas previously it did not include that.
Okay. And the hotel could possibly be B1 if certain amenities are met or provided?
It could, yes. The developer is to find a hotel operator for the site, and so depending on how that moves forward, we may see development of the hotel as part of phase one.
Okay, thanks. And the feedback is, I definitely understand the request, especially with parking. I do have a concern. I think staff had mentioned about the parking deficit when that garage gets built, if those surface lots go away, because that's one of my concerns with the possible phasing. I don't want this to kind of develop as a disjointed development where we've got portions of Gilbert Road with just kind of open space. And I don't want to be disjointed development, especially if we're just getting the multifamily development in the surface parking lot, overflow parking. So that would be my one concern with the phasing. I understand the request, but that's my one concern when we do it this way. But hopefully the phasing makes long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Simon.
I just have one question. With and not doing the second parking garage, are we going to be meeting the need in that area?
Chairman and Commission member, when the design is submitted, we will verify all parking numbers and make sure that the design, the parking, the surface parking lots do meet the requirements. So I can't really answer that this plan meets those requirements, but that is something that staff is evaluation, or Bianchi mentioned. During construction of the garage, that surface parking will obviously no longer be available. And so during construction, there may be a part that, and so we're continuing to work through that and how that might be handled. So that's another item that I don't have a kind of a definitive answer, whether or not this building is kind of staggered construction and they park temporarily on that site and operate at a partial deficit. We'll continue to work through that, do an update as we move along.
Commissioner Anderson.
Ashley, can you explain to me again how they were planning on, for the parking, divvying that up, and how that actually all works again?
So the north garage that is surrounded by the multifamily parks the multifamily component, some excess spaces in that garage that originally were to be allocated for the hotel. As part of this new proposal, they're contemplating that the excess spaces would be for the hotel and retail, and then the south garage would make up the bulk of what's left to meet the requirement. The approval of this project in 2022 did include an AUP that allowed a reduction in parking based on captive adjustment, so people that are on site visiting for multiple reasons, and some offset peak usage was also factored into that original study. There are surface parking spaces along the streets as well. We just, like I mentioned before, need some more information from that design review application before we really answer questions on how parking will be handled through the phasing of it, but we'll be looking at that very closely.
Okay, I guess what I'm curious about, I mean, they're talking about assigning, what was it, 900 spaces or something like that, or that won't be used public. And I don't, like, when I go to that downtown area, like on a Friday, it's gone sometimes where I would go into either garage and there wasn't a space open. As you're looking at the parking for this area, are you including, I look at parking for that whole area outside of what's being proposed here? So the 2 garages and there's a big surface parking lot in that area. Are you taking into account areas to make sure like this whole area is getting properly parked?
Great question. So our economic development group did do a heritage district parking study that evaluated within the district. This site and the parking spaces on this site are really only intended the requirements of this site. That was one of the items in their development agreement that it parks. What we do for the rest of the heritage district, so the garage that the town owns, is if an applicant wants to be able to those spaces towards their required parking, we keep track of that to make sure all parking requirements are met throughout the district. This site didn't explore what happens outside of it because the requirement was that all of their parking required on site.
Okay. All right. Who owns the land right now? Okay, so you guys have already sold it to the
Correct.
applicant? Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? Okay. Well, I think that, and I see this project get started. I recognize that when we originally had it come through, a little thing, COVID plowed through the world and caused a bit of a disruption. So I understand some deviations. The parking thing, this is where I get land rights issue of, okay, there's a park on it right now, but does that mean that they're obligated to continue to provide free parking when it's technically now their land? And I don't know. I lean towards, I like the idea of that what they do on their site, they have to sustain it. When it comes directly to the phasing, I think this sounds very reasonable. It encourages, as we've said, that as we do the construction phasing, that that does allow at least a tapering of that parking and not just block it all off. And I recognize there'll be safety issues, but it will still be used by some people, and especially at night, so just be careful. Okay. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Very well, then. This will take us directly into number 3 on the agenda, a discussion of the agenda. I know, does anybody reason that on the consent, we have the Gilmore, D3-38, is there any reason that would have to come off? Any public members out there? No, I didn't see. Okay, and then on the non-consent, we have GP 2215 and Z 2215, the SEC Lindsay Road and Street. And I believe there were some issues brought up, so they need to stem that. So we will be hearing a presentation from Sal. So that means there's no changes. Well, I guess we'll adjourn the study session and reconvene here in about 15 minutes for the meeting. Thank you. Okay, is everybody ready to get the regular meeting started? It's kind of an ironic question because everybody that's here can say yes, but whoever isn't here can't really speak. But we're going to kick it off. I'm going to call the regular meeting to order, and the first order on the agenda will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can we get a roll call?
Alternate Everett. Present. Commissioner DeGravina. Present. Commissioner Simon.
Here.
Commissioner Gage.
Here.
Commissioner Fay. Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah.
Vice Chairman Bianchi.
Present?
Chairman Mund.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Very good. Okay. Well, I'd like to get the approval of the agenda. I believe we had a discussion that there will not be any changes, so I would entertain a motion.
Chair, if you're ready,
Yep.
I'd move to approve the agenda as presented tonight.
Thank you. Got a move from the vice chair. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Simon. Okay. Please vote on your machine. Maybe, yeah. Seven oh. Okay. Communications. Going to move on to some communications from citizens. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters within the jurisdiction of the town. The Commissioner Board may not discuss the items that are not specifically intended on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to state law, action taken as a result of the public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak? Okay, not seeing any. We'll move on to a report from the council liaison, who also is not here. Councilmember Anderson is unwell, so I doubt there's any report. And we will move directly then into the public hearing consent. All items listed below are considered to the public hearing consent calendar. The commission may, by a single motion, approve any number of items where, after opening it to the public hearing, no person requests the item to be removed from consent calendar. If such a request is made, the Commissioner Board shall then withdraw the item from the public hearing consent calendar for the purpose of public discussion and separate action. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak on number 7, DR 22-38, the Gilmore? I don't have any cards and I don't see anyone. So I will then entertain a motion. Currently, the consent agenda is of one item, number 7, DR 23-38, the Gilmore. Do I have a motion?
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as stated with no changes.
Consent. The consent, yeah.
Oh, consent, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, consent item.
We have a motion from Commissioner Simon. Do I have a second?
Second?
Vice Chair Bianchi comes through with the second. Any discussion? No. Everyone vote, please. Very well, unanimous, 7-0. That moves us right along into the next public hearing, non-consent. Non-consent public hearing items will be heard at an individual public hearing and will be acted upon by the commission by a separate motion. During the public hearings, anyone wishing to comment in support or in opposition to a public hearing item may do so. If you wish to comment on a public hearing item, you must fill out a public comment card indicating the item number with which you wish to be heard. Once the hearing is closed, there will be no further public comment unless requested by a member of the commission. We have, are these items going to be in one presentation? They will? Okay.
Yes.
So we have two items on the non-consent for which we will see a presentation from Sal, and that's number 8, GP 22-15, SEC Lindsay Road and Lexington Street, and Z22-15 of the same name for number 9. Sal, please take it away.
Excuse me. All right. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. Glad to see you in the new year. So for tonight, we have general plan case GP 22-15 and zoning case Z 22-15, the southeast corner of Lindsay Road and Lexington Street. The subject site outlined in blue is an approximately 2.7 acre site located at the southeast corner of Lindsay Road and Lexington Street, which is just east of Rivulon. The subject site is also being reviewed with a concurrent application, which is an annexation, which is to be heard later on in the month at Town Council on the 23rd for a final decision. But the request we have for you tonight is at first a minor general plan amendment on the 2.7 acres from the current general office, the current general office to the proposed general commercial. And the rezoning request is for the current RU 43 in Maricopa County, which would then be SF 43 through the annexation, and is proposed to rezone to general commercial. Here we have the general plan exhibit, which outlines the boundaries of the property as well as laying out the proposed general plan designation from the previous general office to the proposed general commercial. And staff considers this an appropriate land use change as the general commercial is expected to develop commercial uses that'll assist to the surrounding residential and business park. As we move on to the zoning exhibit, we can see the outline of the property here, which is currently zoned Maricopa County Rural RU 43, which will become SF 43 through the annexation process, and the proposal is to rezone to general commercial. And similar to the general plan amendment, the intention is to provide neighboring employment and residences with some new commercial opportunities. As for the development standards, this is a conventional rezoning and general plan request without a proposed PAD. So anything developed on the site would follow the development regulations set forth in the LDC for the general commercial zoning district. For public participation, a neighborhood meeting was held back on March 25th of 2022. 4 surrounding community members attended. General input was from just, curiosity of potential development as well as potential impacts revolving around noise, odor, and potential lighting. We do have an updated condition for you all tonight. In your report, there was previously a condition C, but after staff review, it's been determined that we would like to remove condition C from your proposed staff report. And with that, staff's recommendation to you all to recommend approval to the Town Council for both GP 22-15 and Z 22-15, subject to the conditions in the staff report and the striking of condition C. And with that, I can open the floor up to any questions. Thank you.
Very good, Sal, thank you. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to start off for Sal? Vice Chair Bianchi, please.
I'll help you fill the void. So I'm just curious, so on a less than 3 acre site, if we rezone to GC, what kind of uses could be envisioned on this parcel?
Yeah, Vice Chair Bianchi, Chair Munt. With the general commercial zoning, there's the opportunity for various commercial uses such as, gas station, potential quick service restaurant, regular restaurant. It's just an opportunity to provide some of the, residences to the east as well as that major business park to the west with some commercial alleviation than what's there currently.
Okay, thanks. And as that canal kind of works its way south, it kind of cuts those parcels along Lindsay. So I guess that's my one concern is, does it negatively impact the parcels to the south as far as development, or would there potentially be the opportunity for shared access off of Lexington into those properties for future development?
The shared access,
Vice Chair Bianchi, Chair Munt. There's definitely conversation to be had about the shared access from Lindsay to the property to the south. In regards to potentially hindering the ability to develop, we believe that the general commercial proposal has the ability to develop just fine. And with the business park zoning to the south, there is still the ability to develop some small-scale office or, down the road, the potential to rezone or general plan as well.
Okay, so it's not limited by this request. Okay, thanks.
And just a follow-up, is the owner of the southern parcel the same as this one, or are these two separate?
Chair Munt, it's changed since the last time I spoke to you. I believe the property owner to the south is different, but I can go ahead and verify for you.
Okay, it was just more of a question of whether they would, but if they didn't come out to a meeting, I guess. Okay, anyone else? Commissioner Simon.
Yeah, I have a question. So this aerial map that you have up for us right now was not in the staff report. It appears to me that Rivulon Boulevard is not aligned with what used to be Lexington. Is that going to pose an issue down the road?
Chair Simon,
That's okay.
back to the old way. Commissioner Simon, Chair Munt, apologies. With the current alignment of Rivulon and Lexington, it is a bit off-centered. So with the proposed condition of the 40-foot right-of-way dedication, that would help align both Rivulon and Lexington as traffic flows east to west.
So is that condition C that you are removing, is that at the staff's, or is that staff's request, or is that the applicant's request, and does that tie into this? Because that condition C looked to me like it was the ability to purchase that land from the developer or potential down the road.
Yes. Commissioner Simon, Chair Munt, it was a mutual decision after staff conversation with the applicant side. Condition A is where the 40-foot right-of-way dedication is mentioned, and condition C is where we had the town's potential to purchase an extra 22 feet. But given the condition A with the 40 feet, the alignment of Rivulon and Lexington could be possible.
Thank you.
Well done. Anyone else? Or? Okay. Well, with the developer, I think there's a representative here. He's been here all night on every case, so we might as well let him speak. Okay. Mr. Baugh.
Thank you, members of the commission. Adam Baugh, 2525 East Arizona Biltmore Circle. With me is Gina and Hannah, and frankly, they're the brains of this operation, and I just get to put on the suit and look smart. This will be a quick presentation. Where we're at in the beginning of the day versus where we're at the end of the day, it's an evolving process, but I appreciate staff's help and guidance as we work through some issues related to, most important, the Lexington Avenue alignment. This puts some context of where we are relative to the surrounding area. And I think this property has a different consideration today, likely because of the freeway off-ramp and on-ramp at Lindsay Road that didn't exist previously. And because that freeway off-ramp, on-ramp will now bring a lot more opportunities for the office users inside Rivulon and to the north, some type of commercial amenities to serve them, albeit small, is an added benefit and value to that area. You know it's in the county presently right now to be annexed into the town, subject to this rezoning as well. But this gives you a little bit of perspective, and we think new commercial opportunities will both benefit Rivulon, the commercial offices to the north, and any of that pass-by traffic that works its way up and down the arterial street to those freeway on-ramps and off-ramps. Some things, though, that I think are important to help put the proper perspective and framing into this is there's some existing right-of-way that was dedicated by the office buildings to the north. And then there's a parcel that Gina owns, which has some town improvements in there, and for some weird circumstances was not conveyed to the town. So that's a conversation that we're having with the town to affect that conveyance going forward. Then you can see between that blue outlined area and the red parcel boundary is right-of-way that was acquired by the town and improved in 2021. And then you have our parcel right here. You'll notice the comment from one of the commissioners regarding the disalignment of Lexington Avenue on one side of the road versus the other. And I think this is an opportunity for the town to create a more linear alignment. One of the things that helps you understand the purpose of that, though, is the background. The area in green was acquired by the town through a purchase, and then that right-of-way was installed in 2019, 2020-ish. And then under that stipulation A, you can see that the town is looking for an additional 40 feet of right-of-way. And then in stipulation C was an extra 22 feet that they desired to be reserved for them, but thankfully, I think it's been stricken. But as you start to kind of layer in the site, and I think I almost promoted you, Tony, to a council member. Commissioner Bianchi, noted it is a small parcel. What can you do with this small area? And as you start to think through like the setbacks, this will help you get a little bit of, I'll jump to this exhibit in a minute, but this is really your developable area. You layer in your drainage and your canal easements. The drainage easement can probably be relocated. You'd have to likely go underground. Then you start to add in some of your setbacks. So along the street, Lindsay Road, you'd have a 20-foot setback. Lexington's considered the front yard, I believe, based on the address of the property. So that's another 25-foot setback. And then because you have residential to the east and residential to the south, you have to have a 75-foot setback. So this is effectively your building envelope area, which isn't much, but because staff has agreed to remove that stipulation C, that orange area goes away and allows our setback to go a little closer to the street, gives us a little bit more of an expanded envelope. And I suspect that based on our conversations with staff, their willingness to help us guide through potential PAD in the future to reduce some of those setbacks or potential variances could be another way to expand that envelope as needed. But the types of uses that you'd see there and what we've entertained in the past have been convenience users, gas station users, quick serve, and it wouldn't surprise me at all to see, even after all the commercial zoning, maybe somebody just puts an office back in here, after all things said and done. But there is sufficient space to do it, and I think there's a little bit of nimbleness to adjust the drainage easements and some of these setbacks once a future user is identified that can get us back to a spot that's a developable parcel. One of the concerns that we've had all along is it reasonable for this property to absorb this much right-of-way for such a small piece of property when it seems that the purpose is mostly to align with the right-of-way across the street. As you can see, it looks like that existing right-of-way on the west side of the road, I call it the Lexington swoop. It's not a legal term, it's just something easily identified. It looks like it came down about 30 feet. When you look at the right-of-way on the opposite side of the road, which is 30 feet wide and is no longer aligned, and I don't think will ever be used by the town, which is next to the office. So it seems to me that the desire for the additional right-of-way and what was considered a 22-foot reservation was to better align those so they're more parallel or with each other. Our contention has been all along that perhaps there was another way to look at this so not one property had absorbed so much of that right-of-way. And I think I'm grateful that staff has come to the conclusion, and we appreciate that assistance, to remove that reservation requirement. And I believe some ongoing conversations between now and the next council meeting about also reimagining that 40-foot right-of-way dedication to, if it could be a mix of dedication and easement instead of just pure dedication. So with that kind of commitment and spirit of compromise and working together, I think we're pretty comfortable moving forward with the case as it is today. And in the next 2 weeks, getting a better definition and working with staff on what is the ultimate need for that future right-of-way, so that way we can dial it in more tightly before now and the next council action. And with that being said, I think I appreciate the willingness to get us to this point and entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Baugh. Anyone have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Baugh, on the south side of the property, you mentioned there was a 75-foot setback requirement for residential.
Yeah.
It looks like is it business park or is it residential to the south?
Well, that's a great question. I'm assuming it was residential, but I'm willing to be wrong on that one.
Okay. One of the maps I have here indicates business
In my
park.
honest opinion, though, my suspicion is that we have a desire to provide a cross-access easement between the two parcels, and hopefully there'll be an assemblage where there could be more of commercial opportunity extending further south.
And I think you're leading where I was going with this, in that I think in the future when you come in for a site plan, I think it would be nice to see that cross-access because that makes that parcel
that parcel is going to be more successful if it can get that access through this site. So it'd be nice to see if your property owner was open to something like that when they do it.
So nice.
That's all I had.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Anderson.
Adam, thank you for the presentation. Looking at this is a good exhibit. I like this exhibit a lot, the developable area. How come you're not requesting any deviations to setbacks to increase that developable area?
It's a great question. When this application was started, like 5 years ago, Chevron was the applicant. And they were taking this application through for themselves, and for reasons that we can't understand, they backed out of it. And then several other applicants have tied up the property only to back out. And so we decided we didn't want to continue to lose out on the opportunity, so we took forward the application even though we don't have a user anymore. So if we had a specific user, I would probably have a different nature of an application with more specific PAD deviations, but we're early for that, but we also needed to put the property in the position to attract more committed users instead of taking a 6-month free tour of the property and then not committing to it.
So you're just rezoning the property to something that's more usable to sell it to somebody else?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's more appropriate for that area.
Okay.
At the end of the day, a user's going to come with a site plan,
Yeah.
and they'll either have to apply for some variances, which this might be one of those rare circumstances where the topography and the shape of the property actually qualify for it, or they'll come in and file a PAD.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Yep, Commissioner Gage.
Thank you, Chair. So Adam, you're good with the application right now. I just want to make sure with striking that condition C, you're good to move forward.
Yeah, we are. I think there's a good working relationship to massage stipulation A little bit further. And if needed, we have the opportunities for continuances at that level, but I like the way it's progressed in the last few hours.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you to staff for working with them on this. Appreciate it.
Very well. Any other comments or questions?
Thank
Okay,
you.
very good. Thank you, Mr. Ball. All right, I don't have any comment cards, so I don't see anyone else in the public that wishes to speak. So I will close the public hearing and bring it up to the dais for discussion or a motion. Commissioner Gage?
I'll make a motion to approve item GP 22-15 and one at a time, right? So southeast corner of Lindsay Road and Lexington Street.
We have a motion from Commissioner Gage. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Simon with the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. All votes are in, unanimous passing. I'll entertain a motion for item 9 if there is one.
I'll make a motion for approval of Z 22-15 southeast corner Lindsay Road and Lexington Street.
We have a motion from Commissioner Gage. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Simon with the second. No discussion seen. Please cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Very well. Thank you all. Move on to some administrative items. And we have none. So we'll go to the communications into an executive session, which we don't have, and I'll ask if there's any reports from the chairman or members of the commission on current events. Anybody have anything they'd like to add? Okay. Well, I will just say Happy New Year. It's great to be back right away. I almost forgot this meeting existed until I got back, but I made it, so glad to see you all. Any reports from the Planning Services Manager?
Thank you, Chair. Happy New Year. I just wanted to report that next week we'll be conducting interviews for our vacant planner position since Noah Schumer departed. Wish us luck. If we find a hire for this position, it'll be the first time we're at full staff in the 5 years I've been here.
There you go, yeah. All right, thank you, Eva. All right, now Because I'm not a dictator, I will ask if there's a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion from Commissioner Simon to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Vice Chairman Bianchi with the second. Please cast your vote. We have one abstention and 6 yeses. Vote passes 601. Now we're having fun.